Hello and welcome to TwoFatBrokers. I'm Ben from Abu Dhabi.
I'm Barney from Dubai.
And today we've got a bit of a technical one for you that we don't often do, but I think we'd like to do more of. So today we're going to be talking about Cialdini's 6 methods of persuasion, how salesmen persuade people to buy things. So if you're a salesman, it might be useful to you. If you're someone who's not a salesman, then maybe these are things you want to look out for when you're in a sales transaction with someone. I'm going to go through all 6 and just have a little bit of a chat about each one and how they work. One of them is something that we mentioned in a video a couple of months ago, which is gift giving. So when someone gives you a gift, you want to reciprocate by doing something for you.
So case in point, I don't know if you guys have ever been to places like Thailand or India or anywhere like that. If you go into one of the emporiums where they sell a lot of the tourist goodies, you will come in and they will usually, in Thailand specifically, they'll lay a wreath over your head, so a garland of flowers. Wreath is for funerals actually, isn't it? Anyway, a garland of flowers around your neck. That is their small gift
Hawaii.
To you. Also, when you go into some jewellery stores or anything like that in Dubai, they'll offer you water. It's not because it's hot outside. That is a small gift that they give to you. You then subconsciously feel a little bit indebted to them and are more inclined to do business with them because they have given you something. And as Ben says, you feel like you want to reciprocate by doing business with them.
I had a good one once in a taxi in Abu Dhabi where the guy offered me a sweetie. Sounds a bit weird actually. Offered me a sweet.
Was that his van full of puppies?
Yeah, exactly. I wish. And he gave me a sweet, and I said, yeah, I'll have a sweet. And then obviously I felt like I need to give him a bigger tip at the end of the ride than I would normally. So in a real estate context. Do they do that anywhere? Perhaps when you go into developer offices?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of developers, Vincitori was one of them. They gave some oud and a whacking great big silver coin that really didn't really have any value.
Before the person bought or after?
No, for the brokers. So as part of their broker invitation, they would send you this big old box with a bottle of oud and this big silver coin that said Vincitori on it. And I think that was probably designed, you've now got this from them. You should really be going to their launch, their broker event.
But when buyers go into, say, Emaar or Azizi or Damac, do they try and give them anything on the way in?
Yeah, tea, coffee. They have tea, coffee stands.
Yeah, the point about the gift is it needs to be personalised. If it's just kind of something for everyone, it's not as powerful. They did an experiment with, I think it was waitering, whereby at the end of the meal, if the waiter gave you like a mint or whatever, they got 3% more tips. But if the waiter gave you a mint, went away, and then came back and said, because you guys have been so lovely, there's an extra mint, you got an extra 10% in the tip that they were given. So the gift needs to be personalised. So if some dodgy broker's trying to give you a gift, be careful, because
from his van full of puppies.
If it's a puppy, that would be amazing. Once you take the puppy, you have to buy something. It's just human nature. So there you go.
Keep an eye out.
Yeah.
So the next one is experts. People are more inclined to trust or do business with somebody who has been introduced to them as an expert in that field. So as the owner of real estate brokerages, we encourage our staff to be experts in specific areas so that when they present themselves to their clients, I have been doing business here. I've been doing business in Emirates Hills for over a decade. So therefore people will look at me as an expert and understand the information I'm giving them.
But there is a but to that. You can't introduce yourself as an expert. Someone else must introduce you as an expert.
True.
So
Ben introduced me as an expert.
So what will normally happen if you're calling up a real estate company, the person on the end of the phone will say, I'll put you through to our Palm Jumeirah expert, Bob. And once they've said that, even if the buyer you should really predict that, they would say they were an expert. That actually, in human psychology, it's actually quite powerful that someone else says you're an expert. For example, this is also a classic thing amongst influencers. So if the Kardashians are selling some beauty product or something, you see the Kardashians as experts, in beauty because they've been introduced to them or whatever it might be. And so you're more likely to buy from the Kardashians because you think, they are an expert. So, even though they probably know not zero about,
they know a lot about makeup.
Take a lot of makeup on.
I think you've probably hit the nail on the head as an analogy or as an example. They're actually probably very good. They probably know a lot about makeup.
Yeah.
But the point being, somebody needs to be referred to you and has introduced you as an expert.
Yeah. And what you sometimes see is brokers have their own, I'm the Jamurovic triangle expert or whatever it is in their bio.
Yeah.
And that's an attempt to persuade you to trust them. And when you trust someone, you're more likely to take their advice and you're more likely to buy from them.
True. The next one is popularity. What is popularity?
Humans love things that are popular. We love to buy things that are popular.
Example.
Fashion, yeah, and influencers use this as well, but it's a psychological shortcut. Humans don't have the time to do the research all the time, and most of the time we're not equipped to do the research. So we just see what everyone else is buying. Everyone else seems to be buying this. It must be good, therefore we should buy it as well. We're just assuming that those people have done the research and they know what they're talking about, and talk about this as a good book. I think it's called The Madness of Crowds. Is when everyone's buying something, everyone else goes, well, if everyone's buying it, it must be great, and they start buying it, and it sort of kind of snowballs out of control.
Like a queue. People are inclined to join a queue because it must lead to something important at the end of it. Otherwise, people wouldn't be queuing.
Possibly.
It's a fact.
People just join queues for no reason?
No, a queue indicates that there's something at the end of it that's worth queuing for.
Well, actually, if we hark back to our youths,
I don't think anybody just joined a queue because there was a queue.
Well, a queue signals something's popular or closed.
That's what I just said.
So, for example,
people don't queue outside closed things.
Well, remember, we used to go to nightclubs back in the day, discotheques as we call them now, and there would be a queue outside, and the bouncers would keep there being a queue so that it looked popular. Otherwise, these clubs are absolutely bloody enormous. They could just let everyone in, but they don't. They just make them queue up nice, and orderly, so that the place looks popular.
True. So there you go.
Yeah.
Scarcity.
We like things there are not much of, as you can probably imagine. People talk about these limited edition things, and people actually talk about the value of Bitcoin being in its scarcity. There's only a certain number of million Bitcoins that you can, I don't believe in Bitcoin whatsoever, but there's only a certain number of Bitcoins that can be mined. So once they are all mined, there'll be an enormous value to Bitcoin because it'll be so scarce. But Bitcoin aside, if you're only launching, and developers do this, but they always launch in phases, right? They'll never launch, very rarely launch the whole thing in one go. There'll be phase one, there's only 40, 50 units or whatever it might be, so that you come in and there's hardly any units, you're desperate to get it, and then miraculously phase two opens up if there's enough interest
at a higher price,
and then phase three,
at a higher price.
and it goes like that. But they want to get in there with only 30 units, only 40 units, whatever it might be, so that we're like kind of, oh my goodness, I've got to get one of those because they're so scarce.
Yeah.
So that's another interesting psychological trick that developers can use.
Also, diamonds are quite an interesting analogy for this.
Phil's best friend, are you?
Diamonds are
forever.
Are considered to be scarce. It's actually a lot of diamonds, and if all of the diamonds were,
people must lose them all the time. Imagine how many diamond rings there've been.
But diamonds, if you look at the numbers, Graph and the other well-established diamond miners and what are they called when you prepare it? Anyway, there's a lot more diamonds that they have in their stock, but they only release them into the market slowly because then that keeps up the value.
Because there's less.
Correct.
Right. Next one is a small step. So people are more likely to make a larger purchase if they've made a small step. Something that we like to do as real estate agents, and it's actually a good practice, but is to get a buyer to make a written offer. Okay, make a written offer, sign it, give us your passport copy, we'll take it to the owner, and then when the owner comes back, and he doesn't agree with the offer price or whatever, because you've made that small step already, you're more likely to agree to the price.
It's a small
afterwards.
commitment is a process in the larger commitment.
The thin end of the wedge. It's very, and they talk about this actually, if you're ever thinking about converting someone to be a spy for your side, right? So the Americans are trying to, convert Russians or whatever to spy for America. You don't go in and say, hey, do you want to spy for America?
Other enemies are available.
Yeah, and they also do it with cricket betting as well. They don't say, hey, do you want to match fix? They go in with something much smaller. Like, can I pay you, and this was done with Alex Stewart one, can I pay you for the weather forecast? Okay, that seems like a kind of a nothing thing, to be paid for.
The weather forecast?
Yeah. So this is what's happened. In the early days, they used to pay cricketers for the weather forecast because they didn't really want the weather forecast, but they wanted that process to begin where they were paying for things from the cricketers, and they kind of got sucked more and more deeply into it, but through this thin end of the wedge idea, where you're when you start asking for bigger and bigger and bigger things, and you agree to something you have never agreed to in the beginning because you've taken all these small steps. So that's how you corrupt people.
So it's the same premise as getting someone to say yes 3 times. It's a small commitment every time, and then when you ask the bigger question, they have got used to saying yes. This is another method of closing. If you get someone to say the word yes, however you manage to manifest it, or once they've said yes 3 times, then you ask them the bigger question, and because they're used to yes becomes much more easy for them. It's the same premise, small steps.
Yes, you could definitely say that. So just bear that in mind. If you're a broker, that's a good way to do it. If you're someone who's buying, be aware that this is something that
don't say yes to people.
Will mean you're slightly more persuadable. And the last one is rapport. So in the way that we also are more likely to work with experts and agree with them and be persuaded by them, we also like to do that with people who we are in rapport with.
Yes.
And what does being in rapport with mean for you, Barn?
Rapport is a relationship. If you're on solid ground with an individual whom you've built a relationship and understanding with a like-minded person, you're much more likely to take their advice. More specifically, if you are like-minded. So if you have other common interests, other things that you all agree on, you're more likely to then listen to what this other person has to say and go, actually, that's a fairly good point. Ben and I have 0 rapport. It's why we argue so much.
We don't. But here's a fantastic example. Most confidence schemes are perpetrated by people of a certain group within that group. So a great example is Bernie Madoff. So he had this Ponzi scheme. He targeted Jewish people because he was Jewish. And they would think, oh, he's Jewish, he's a great guy, he obviously knows what he's talking about, there's no way he's going to rip me off. They were in rapport with him, because one of the great ways of building rapport is to have things in common, and religion and country and language and things like that allows you to be more in rapport with someone, to trust them, to believe what they're talking about. And so he persuaded a lot of people to give him his money, which he then stole, because he had a lot of similarities with that group of people, and he targeted them. And most confidence schemes happen in the same way, where you target a group of people who are very much like you and who trust you.
Also an element of small steps as well. Bernie Madoff would have borrowed small amounts of money from them, proved his worth, more and larger sums, where if he'd come in at the beginning and gone, give us $400 million, they'd have said, not a chance.
Well, I mean, he was an investor, so I'm sure he got big sums all the time. But as also an expert, he was an expert, in his field as well. So there's quite a few things which allowed him to sell himself to people.
Not that we're advocating being Bernie Madoff.
Yeah, but being in rapport is good, and it's also why when you get cold calls from the financial advisors, they always want to be your friend. Hey, Barney, how's it going today? Yeah, how's your weekend? Got any Christmas plans? And you're telling us, oh, bugger off. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to buid rapport with you, because they want to build that relationship so that you're more likely to listen to their sales pitch later on.
Spiel.
Yes, spiel. So there's your 6 methods of persuasion. If you're a broker, use them. If you're someone who's being sold to, look out for them.
I've been Barney Crompton.
I've been Ben Crompton.
We've been Two Fat Brokers. Thank you for joining us.
And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.